The text from Mom arrived at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. "You're not coming to the wedding. Anna's family doesn't want you there. No explanation, no apology. Just cold, clinical words on a screen." I stared at my phone in my downtown office, surrounded by architectural blueprints for the venue I'd personally designed and paid for. The venue where my little sister was supposed to marry into the prestigious Hartfield family in 6 weeks. I smiled, typed back, "So you chose status over blood?" Then I opened my laptop and started canceling everything. My name is Terry, and I spent the last 10 years building something that mattered. Not just a business, but a life my father would have been proud of. Dad died 8 years ago from pancreatic cancer. The medical bills nearly destroyed us. Mom worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria and cleaned offices at night. Anna was only 19, struggling through community college. I was 25, fresh out of graduate school, with my architecture degree and drowning in student loans. I made a promise at Dad's funeral. I promised I would take care of them. And I did. I worked 80-hour weeks at a firm in Chicago, took on every project nobody else wanted, learned the business inside and out. By the time I was 28, I started my own architectural firm. By 30, I was profitable. By 32, I had 12 employees and a reputation for innovative commercial design. The first thing I did with real money was pay off Dad's medical debt, $347,000. Then I paid off Mom's mortgage. Then I funded Anna's transfer to a 4-year university and her graduate program in marketing. I never asked for gratitude. They were family. That's what you do. Anna met Justin Hartfield 2 years ago at some corporate networking event in downtown Chicago. He was handsome, charming, came from what Mom kept calling a very prominent family. The Hartfields owned a real estate empire spanning 6 states. Country club memberships, galas, charity boards, the kind of wealth that gets your name engraved on hospital wings. When Anna called to tell me she was engaged, I heard something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not quite joy, more like relief, like she'd won something. But I pushed that thought away. I wanted her to be happy. I offered to design and pay for the wedding venue. I'd recently purchased a historic mansion on the outskirts of Chicago, a beautiful 1890s estate that I planned to restore and use for events. I poured $350,000 into renovations, custom lighting, restored hardwood floors, updated electrical and plumbing while maintaining the period details. It was perfect. I put down another $200,000 for the wedding itself. Caterers, florists, a photographer I flew in from New York, a string quartet, everything. I handled it all through my company accounts. The venue was booked under my firm's name. Every deposit came from my accounts. I wanted Anna's day to be perfect. Over the following months, I noticed tension creeping into family dinners. Justin's parents, Richard and Caroline Hartfield, attended a few planning sessions. Richard was 58, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Caroline was 53, elegant in that way that screamed expensive maintenance. They spoke in measured tones about appropriate guests and maintaining standards. At one dinner 3 weeks before that text message, Richard made a comment that stuck with me. We were discussing the guest list, and Anna mentioned inviting some of her college friends. Richard wrinkled his nose. "I trust you'll ensure the guest list maintains a certain caliber. New money has a tendency to. Well, let's just say, not everyone understands tradition." He looked directly at me when he said it. I set down my fork. "I'm sorry. What does that mean?" Caroline jumped in smoothly. "Nothing at all. Richard simply means we want Anna's special day to reflect the joining of 2 families with similar values." I let it go, for Anna's sake. Then came Tuesday night. That text from Mom. I immediately called Anna. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice shook. "Terry, I can't talk right now. What is going on? Mom just uninvited me from your wedding. Silence. Then a shaky breath. The Hartfields found something. About your past. They hired an investigator. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? When you were in college. The protest. The arrest. I closed my eyes. 12 years ago, when I was 21 and scraping together money for tuition, I attended a protest against tuition hikes. It was supposed to be peaceful. It turned into a riot. Police made mass arrests. I spent 4 hours in holding before they released me. The charges were dropped. It was nothing. Anna, that was a decade ago. The charges were dismissed. I was innocent. They don't care about innocent. Her voice cracked. They say you have a criminal record. They say you're unsuitable for their social circle. Richard told Justin if I don't agree to exclude you, they'll call off the wedding. They'll cut Justin off from the family business. Everything. So you're choosing them over me. Don't make this harder than it is. Please. I love Justin. This is my chance at a real life. The kind of life we could never afford growing up. I can't lose this because you can't let go of something that happened years ago. I'm your brother, and Justin is going to be my husband. I need you to understand. I need you to not come to the wedding. She hung up. I sat in my office, surrounded by blueprints of the venue I'd built for her, and felt something break inside me. Not sadness, anger. Cold, clear anger. I opened my laptop. I started with the venue contract. As the owner and the person who'd paid all deposits, I had every right to cancel. I drafted the cancellation notice. Then I called my lawyer, David Walsh. It was almost midnight, but David answered. Terry? What's wrong? I need you to cancel a wedding venue contract and pull all associated vendor deposits tonight. Tonight? That's going to cost you penalties. I don't care. Do it. I hung up and started emailing vendors. The caterer, the florist, the photographer, the string quartet. Every single one had been contracted and paid deposits by me personally. I canceled everything. At 12:17 in the morning, my email pinged. The sender was a law firm I didn't recognize. Thornton, Wade, and Associates. The subject line read, Legal Notice, Breach of Contract. I opened it. The letter was from Richard Hartfield's personal attorney. It claimed I was in breach of a contractual agreement to provide the venue and services. It threatened to sue me for damages, breach of contract, and something called intentional interference with contractual relations. The damages they claimed totaled $1.2 million. The letter ended with a threat. Further action against the Hartfield family will result in both civil and criminal prosecution. We have already begun notifying members of Chicago's architectural community of your unstable and vindictive behavior. We strongly suggest you reconsider your actions. I read it twice. They were threatening my business, my reputation, everything I'd built. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Mr. Terry? A man's voice, smooth and cold. This is Richard Hartfield. I think we need to have a conversation about your future in this city. I barely slept that night. By 7 in the morning, my phone was ringing. 3 different clients, all scheduled for major projects over the next 6 months, all calling to postpone. The first was Bradley Morrison, from Morrison Industrial Properties. Terry, I'm sorry to do this, but we need to pause the warehouse renovation project. Some concerns have come up on the board. What concerns? Look, I don't want to get into it. Let's just say there are questions about your professional judgment. We'll revisit in 6 months. 6 months meant never. I knew it. He knew it. The second call was Margaret Peterson, from Peterson Hospitality Group. Her tone was apologetic, but firm. Terry, the hotel expansion is being put on hold. It's nothing personal, just business considerations. The third was James Hartford, from Hartford Financial. He didn't bother with niceties. Terry, we're terminating our contract for the office tower redesign. Legal will be in touch about the terms. 3 projects. Combined value of just under $1 million. Gone in 90 minutes. I called David Walsh. They're blackballing me. The Hartfields are using their connections to destroy my business. I warned you this family has reach. Richard Hartfield sits on half a dozen corporate boards in Chicago. Caroline is on 3 charity boards with connections to every major family in the city. They can make you radioactive. So, what do? Back down. Apologize. Try to salvage what you can. I hung up without responding. My office felt smaller suddenly. I had 12 employees depending on me. Rent on office space, equipment leases, payroll due in 2 weeks. Without those 3 contracts, I was looking at laying people off. At noon, Mom called. I almost didn't answer. What do you want? Terry, you need to stop this. Anna is hysterical. The Hartfields are being very generous. They've offered to pay for the entire wedding themselves if you just agree to stay away. They offered to pay you too, didn't they? Silence. Then quietly, they said they'd help me, include me in their social circle. These are the kind of people we could never afford to offend. People who can open doors for us. For you, you mean? Don't be selfish. This is Anna's future. Your father would want you to do the right thing. Dad would want me to stand up for myself, not roll over for bullies with money. Your father is dead, and he left us with nothing but debt. I'm not going to apologize for wanting better for Anna, for wanting better for myself. If you really loved us, you'd let this go. She hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen. My email inbox was filling with messages. Former college friends asking if the news was true. Professional contacts expressing concern. Then I saw it. A link someone forwarded to me. A blog post on Chicago's social scene. A gossip site that covered high society events. The headline made my blood run cold. Prominent family's wedding drama. Brother's criminal past exposed. I clicked. The article was professionally written but vicious. It described my violent criminal history, painting the college protest as something I'd initiated. It claimed I'd been arrested for assault on police officers. It suggested I was unstable and had threatened the Hartfield family. Every word was either an exaggeration or an outright lie, but it was presented as fact. The article included a photo of me from my firm's website. Below it, quotes from anonymous sources describing me as volatile and vindictive. One quote read, "He's become obsessed with destroying his sister's happiness because he can't handle her marrying into a family more successful than his own." My phone started buzzing with texts. Former coworkers, industry contacts, all asking variations of the same question. What's going on? Is this true? I tried calling Anna. She'd blocked my number. I tried emailing. My messages bounced back. My business partner, Eric Donovan, walked into my office at 2 in the afternoon. Eric and I had started the firm together 5 years ago. He was 42, married with 3 kids, steady and practical. He closed the door behind him. "Terry, we need to talk. I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" "Because I've had 6 calls today from concerned clients. The rumor mill is spinning out of control. People think you're having some kind of breakdown. The partnership is at risk. The Hartfields are lying. All of it. The arrest was nothing. The charges were dropped. I believe you. But it doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is that our reputation is being destroyed in real time. We have employees who depend on us. We have obligations. I need to know if you're going to fight this, or if we need to start discussing dissolution." The word hung in the air. Dissolution. The end of everything I'd built. "Give me time. I'm working on something." Eric looked at me with something like pity. "I hope you know what you're doing." After he left, I sat alone in my office as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows. I thought about calling the blog, demanding a retraction. I thought about hiring a publicist, but I knew the Hartfields had unlimited resources for this kind of warfare. They could outlast me. Instead, I made a different call. To Marcus Bennett, a private investigator I'd used once before to vet a potential business partner. Marcus answered immediately. "Terry, I saw the news. You stirring up trouble with the Hartfields? They stirred it up with me. I need you to dig into them. Background, business dealings, anything that doesn't smell right. The Hartfields are connected. That kind of investigation could get expensive. I don't care what it costs. I need leverage. Give me 48 hours. He called back in 36. I was at my apartment, having spent the day watching my professional life crumble online. Marcus's voice was tight with excitement. "Terry, you need to sit down for this. What did you find? Justin Hartfield has a sealed juvenile record. Something serious enough that the family paid to keep it buried. I've got a source who remembers the case. Justin was 17, got a DUI, and crashed his car into another vehicle. The other driver was a 16-year-old girl. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital with a fractured skull and broken ribs. The Hartfields paid the family a settlement in the mid-six figures and used their lawyers to get the record sealed. That's good. What else? Richard Hartfield's real estate company is under investigation. Federal investigation, housing fraud, and tenant harassment. They've been systematically pushing out low-income tenants from rent-controlled buildings, then falsifying documents to claim tax breaks for affordable housing. We're talking $15 million in fraudulent tax benefits over the last 8 years. There are 6 lawsuits from displaced families. One elderly couple ended up homeless after the Hartfields had them illegally evicted. My hands were shaking. Can you prove this? I've got court documents, complaint filings, and 3 witnesses willing to talk. This is real, Terry. The Hartfields are dirty. Keep digging. I need everything. Terry, listen to me. If they find out you're investigating them, they'll escalate. These aren't people who back down. Neither am I. I hung up. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. You need to stop. Richard Hartfield's voice was low and dangerous. Whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop right now. How did you know I was looking into you? I know everything that happens in this city. I know you hired an investigator. I know he's been asking questions. And I'm telling you this once. Back off, or the consequences will be beyond your imagination. You think losing a few contracts is bad? I can make sure you never work in this industry again. I can make sure you end up bankrupt, broken, and alone. Is that really worth protecting your pride? This isn't about pride. This is about you destroying my life because I wouldn't quietly accept being thrown away. You're being thrown away because you're not good enough. You never were. Anna understands that now. Your mother understands it. The only person who doesn't is you. Consider this your final warning. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen gripping the phone and knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The Hartfields weren't going to stop until they'd destroyed me completely, and I had maybe days before they succeeded. By Friday morning, 1 week after Mom's text, I'd lost 2 more contracts. Major projects, both worth over $200,000 each. My business partner, Eric, called an emergency meeting. Our 12 employees sat in the conference room, their faces tight with worry. Eric stood at the head of the table. Everyone, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We're facing a serious crisis. We've lost 5 major contracts in 1 week. Our revenue projections are down 70%, which means we need to make some difficult decisions. I stood up. I'm making the decisions. This is my fault, and I'll handle it. Eric, can we talk privately? In my office, Eric closed the door. We need to lay people off. At least 4, maybe 6. We can't make payroll next month otherwise. I'll cut my own salary to 0. That should buy us time. Terry, cutting your salary helps, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. Our clients are fleeing. Our reputation is being systematically destroyed. I've been approached by 3 competitors offering to buy out my share of the partnership. They're circling like sharks. You're thinking of leaving. I have a wife and 3 kids. A mortgage. I can't ride this down with you if you're determined to fight a war you can't win. 1 week. Give me 1 week to turn this around. Eric looked at me for a long moment. 1 week. Then we make hard choices. That afternoon, I laid off 4 employees. I'd hired each of them personally, trained them, knew their families. Watching them clean out their desks was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Jennifer, a project manager with 2 kids in college, cried. Thomas, a talented designer fresh out of school, just looked numb. After they left, I sat alone in the empty office and let myself feel the weight of it. 4 people without jobs because I'd stood up to a powerful family. My remaining 8 employees updating their resumes because they knew the firm was sinking. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, circling the drain. Marcus called at 6 that evening. I've got more. You're going to want to hear this in person. We met at a diner in a neighborhood where I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. Marcus slid a folder across the table. The housing fraud is worse than I thought. I found records of 6 families who were illegally evicted. The Hartfields used intimidation tactics, fake code violations, hired thugs to harass tenants. Once the buildings were empty, they claimed they were providing affordable housing and collected federal tax breaks. $15.3 million over 8 years. Why haven't they been prosecuted? They have been. There's an active federal investigation. Assistant U.S. Attorney Laura Matthews out of the Northern District. I talked to a paralegal who works on the case. They've been building evidence for 18 months. They're close, but they need more to make charges stick. The Hartfields have expensive lawyers and political connections. I stared at the documents. Photos of displaced families. Court records. Bank statements showing money transfers. This could destroy them. It should destroy them. But rich people have a way of skating. Unless something forces prosecutors to move faster. Marcus paused. There's something else. Something about Justin you need to see. He pulled out another set of documents. Marriage certificate. Boston, Massachusetts. 5 years ago, Justin Hartfield married Emily Richardson. I don't understand. He's marrying Anna. That's the thing. There's no divorce decree. I checked Massachusetts records, Illinois records, every database I could access. This marriage was never dissolved. Justin Hartfield is still legally married to Emily Richardson. The room spun. He's committing bigamy. If he goes through with the wedding to your sister, yes. Which means the Hartfields know. They have to know. They had their own investigator dig into you. You think they didn't check their own son's background? Why would they let him do this? That I don't know yet. But I'll find out. I drove home in a fog. Justin was already married. Anna was about to unknowingly commit bigamy. The Hartfields knew and didn't care. What kind of people were these? At home, I found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside were photographs and documents. More evidence of Justin's marriage to Emily Richardson. Private investigator reports dated 6 months ago, commissioned by Thornton, Wade, and Associates, the Hartfield family lawyers. They'd known about Emily for at least 6 months, but there was more. Photos of Emily Richardson with visible bruises. Medical records showing treatment for injuries consistent with domestic violence. A restraining order Emily had filed against Justin 3 years ago, later withdrawn. At the bottom of the package was a handwritten note. You're not the only one they've wronged. Destroy them. A friend. I called Marcus immediately. Someone sent me a package. Evidence about Justin's first marriage. His wife, Emily Richardson. There's a history of abuse. Who sent it? No idea. The note just says a friend. Terry, be careful. This could be a setup. Someone trying to bait you into doing something illegal. Or it's someone who wants the Hartfields exposed as much as I do. I spent that night going through every document. Emily Richardson was 31, living in Boston, working as a paralegal. She'd married Justin when she was 26. The marriage lasted 2 years before she filed for separation. The restraining order cited verbal abuse, threats, and 1 instance of physical violence. But 6 months later, she withdrew the order and agreed to a legal separation without pressing charges. I found Emily's contact information and called her. The phone rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice, cautious. Hello, Emily Richardson? My name is Terry. I'm calling about Justin Hartfield. Silence. Then, how did you get my number? Someone sent me documents about your marriage to Justin. I'm his fiance's brother. Or I was, before they decided I wasn't good enough for their family. You're the one in the news. The brother they're trying to destroy. That's me. Another long pause. What do you want? I want to know why you're still legally married to him. Why you dropped the restraining order. And why someone is sending me evidence about you. Because I sent it. I'm the friend who sent the package. Emily Richardson and I met 2 days later at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago. She was thin, with dark hair pulled back, and eyes that darted nervously around the room before settling on me. We sat in a corner booth, away from windows. Why did you send me those documents? I asked. Because I saw what the Hartfields are doing to you, and I recognized the pattern. They destroyed me the same way, systematically, thoroughly. I thought maybe together we could stop them from doing it again. Tell me what happened. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I met Justin at a law office where I was working as a paralegal. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. We got married fast. Too fast. Within 3 months, I saw who he really was. Controlling, cruel. When he drank, he became violent. The restraining order. He choked me during an argument. Left bruises on my throat. I was terrified. I filed the order and moved to a shelter. Then the Hartfields showed up. Not Justin, his father Richard. He sat across from me in a lawyer's office and made me an offer. Drop the order, agree to a legal separation, never speak publicly about Justin, and they'd pay me $75,000. If I refused, they'd destroy my career. Richard knew things about me, personal things, things I'd never told anyone. He'd had me investigated. He had leverage. And he made it clear he'd use it. So you took the money. I took the money and tried to disappear. I moved back to Boston, changed jobs, tried to rebuild my life. But I never got the marriage officially dissolved because I was afraid. Afraid that filing for divorce would bring them back into my life. And part of me thought maybe someday someone would need proof of what Justin really was. Like Anna. I've been following the engagement news. I saw your sister's photos online. She looked so happy, so naive. I kept thinking I should warn her, but I was afraid. Then I saw the news about you, about what they were doing to destroy you. And I realized they were going to do to her what they did to me. Use her, then throw her away. I couldn't let it happen again without trying to stop it. Do you know why Justin is marrying my sister if he's still married to you? Emily pulled out her phone and showed me an email. It was from Richard Hartfield to Justin, dated 2 months ago. She'd received it from a source she wouldn't name. The email read, "Proceed with the engagement to Anna. We'll handle the legal complications after the wedding. The Richardson matter will be resolved quietly. This marriage serves our purposes for approximately 18 months, after which we'll arrange a discreet dissolution. The girl's family has no resources to challenge us." I read it 3 times. They're planning to let him commit bigamy, then have the marriage annulled later. Anna's just a temporary trophy. Worse than that. Look at the attachment. She scrolled to a document labeled Hartfield Holdings Acquisition Timeline. It detailed a complex series of business acquisitions that required Justin to appear stable and married to secure board approval. Anna wasn't even a trophy. She was a business prop. I have to tell her. She won't believe you. The Hartfields are too good at controlling the narrative. Your sister is too invested in the fantasy. You need more than truth. You need leverage. I have the housing fraud investigation, the federal case. Emily's eyes widened. You know about that? I hired an investigator. The Hartfields have been displacing low-income families and falsifying documents for tax breaks. 15 million in fraud. Then you have more than I do. But Terry, you need to understand something. I've been in contact with the federal prosecutors, specifically Assistant U.S. Attorney Laura Matthews. She reached out to me 6 months ago as a potential witness. The investigation is active, but they're moving slowly because they're trying to build an airtight case. If you expose what you know too early, the Hartfields will cover their tracks and escape. How long do the prosecutors need? Laura told me they need another month, maybe 6 weeks. They're coordinating with the IRS and HUD. It's complex. But if everything goes right, they can arrest Richard and Caroline Hartfield on multiple federal charges. I did the math in my head. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I know. So I'm supposed to let Anna marry Justin, commit bigamy unknowingly, and just wait? If you stop the wedding now by revealing Justin's marriage to me, you save your sister from one nightmare, but let the Hartfields escape justice. They'll hurt more people, more families like the ones they evicted, more women like me and your sister. This is impossible, I know, but it's the only way to stop them permanently. I left that meeting feeling like I was drowning. Every option was terrible. Expose the bigamy now and save Anna, but let the Hartfields escape. Stay silent and watch my sister unknowingly enter a fraudulent marriage while I waited for federal prosecutors to build their case. That night, I received a call from David Walsh, my lawyer. Terry, the Hartfields legal team just made a formal offer. They'll drop the lawsuit, give you $100,000, and stop interfering with your business on 3 conditions. You sign an NDA, you leave Chicago permanently, within 60 days, and you never contact Anna or your mother again. They want me gone. They want you silent and powerless. If you don't take this, they've made it clear they'll pursue criminal charges. They're claiming you embezzled money from the wedding fund. They've fabricated invoices and documents that make it look like you inflated renovation costs to skim funds. The evidence is sophisticated enough that it might take months to disprove, during which time you'd be under investigation, possibly arrested, definitely unemployable. So, I either surrender or they destroy me completely. That's the choice they're giving you. You have 48 hours to decide. I sat in my apartment that night, looking at financial statements. I was down to $30,000 in accessible funds. Legal fees had consumed everything else. My business was effectively dead. Eric had told me that morning he was accepting an offer from a competitor to buy out his partnership share. Our remaining employees were interviewing elsewhere. In 2 weeks, I'd be running a firm with no partner, no employees, and no clients. Taking the Hartfields deal meant accepting defeat, taking their money, leaving Chicago, abandoning Anna, and living with the knowledge that I'd been bought off. Not taking the deal meant financial ruin, possible criminal charges, and watching everything I'd built burn to ash. I thought about my father, about the promise I'd made at his funeral, about the kind of man he'd raised me to be. He'd fought cancer for 2 years, enduring chemo and radiation, never giving up even when the doctors said it was hopeless. He died fighting. Could I do less? At 2 a.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Terry, this is Laura Matthews, Assistant U.S. Attorney. Emily Richardson gave me your number. We need to talk. Laura Matthews met me at a federal building downtown the next morning. She was 45, sharp-eyed, dressed in a no-nonsense gray suit. We sat in a windowless conference room with recording equipment on the table. Emily tells me you have evidence of the Hartfields' activities, she began. I showed her everything. Marcus's investigation into the housing fraud, the displaced families, the falsified documents, the email showing the Hartfields knew about Justin's existing marriage and planned to let him commit bigamy. Laura took notes, her expression hardening with each revelation. This is good. Very good. Combined with what we already have, this could be the final piece we need. How long until you can move? 4 weeks. Maybe 5. We're coordinating with multiple agencies. The IRS is building their case for tax fraud. HUD is documenting the housing violations. We need everything airtight because the Hartfields have powerful lawyers and political connections. If we move too soon, they'll find loopholes. The wedding is in less than 3 weeks. I know. I'm sorry. You're asking me to let my sister marry a man who's already married, to commit a crime unknowingly, while I stay silent. I'm asking you to think about the bigger picture, the 6 families the Hartfields displaced, the elderly couple who ended up homeless, the women like Emily who were abused and paid off. If we can build a case strong enough to put Richard and Caroline Hartfield in federal prison, we can stop them from hurting anyone else. But if you reveal what you know now, they'll cover their tracks. They'll escape justice. What about Anna? When you arrest the Hartfields, her marriage will be exposed as fraud. She won't face criminal charges. She's a victim. We'll make that clear. But her life will be destroyed. Her reputation, her marriage, everything. Yes, but better a destroyed marriage than a lifetime trapped with the Hartfields. I sat there, feeling the weight of the choice. Save Anna from one horror, but let the Hartfields continue hurting others. Or sacrifice Anna's immediate well-being for the greater good and the chance at real justice. If I agree to wait, if I provide everything I have and testify, what happens to me in the meantime? The Hartfields will keep attacking you. We can't protect you without revealing the investigation. You'll have to endure whatever they do for the next 4 weeks. They're offering me money to leave Chicago and never contact my family again. Laura leaned forward. Here's what I can tell you. If you take their deal, sign their NDA, and disappear, we lose a crucial witness. Your testimony about their interference with your business, the fraudulent lawsuit, the systematic destruction of your reputation that establishes a pattern of corruption and intimidation. Without you, our case is weaker. I need you to stay, fight, and endure. And if I do, what's my reward? A ruined business, a destroyed reputation, and a sister who hates me? Your reward is knowing you helped put corrupt, abusive people in prison, that you protected future victims. I know that sounds hollow when you're losing everything, but it's the truth. I left that meeting and walked through downtown Chicago for 2 hours, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from creditors, from former employees asking about severance, from my landlord about rent. The walls were closing in. That evening, I made my decision. I called David Walsh. Tell the Hartfields I'll take their deal. You're sure? Set up the meeting. 2 days later, I sat in a conference room at Thornton, Wade and Associates. Richard Hartfield was there with his lawyers. They slid papers across the table. I read every word. NDA. Agreement to leave Chicago within 60 days. Promise never to contact Anna or Susan again. Prohibition against discussing the Hartfields publicly or providing information to any investigation. In exchange, they'd drop their fraudulent lawsuit, pay me $100,000, and stop interfering with my business. I signed, took their check, shook Richard Hartfield's hand. His grip was cold and his smile was triumphant. Smart choice, he said. You should have made it weeks ago. Would have saved yourself a lot of pain. I left that office and deposited the check. Then I met with Laura Matthews at a different location. I handed her copies of everything I'd just signed. They think they've won, I said. They think I'm beaten and bought. Use that. Let them think I'm gone, then hit them when they're not looking. This was brave. I know it doesn't feel like it. It feels like I just sold out my sister. You didn't. You bought her real freedom, even if she can't see it yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched from a distance as the wedding preparations continued. Anna posted photos on social media, dress fittings, flower arrangements, smiling pictures with Justin and the Hartfields. Every post was a knife in my chest. The Hartfields, believing they'd neutralized me, moved forward confidently. They booked a new venue, an exclusive country club, sent out invitations to 300 guests, hired the best caterers in Chicago. It was going to be the social event of the season. Susan posted constantly. Photos with Caroline Hartfield at charity luncheons, updates about wedding preparations. She'd been fully absorbed into their world, and she loved it. Comments on her posts gushed about how lucky she was, how wonderful the Hartfields were, how beautiful Anna looked. 3 days before the wedding, I received a message from Anna, not on my phone, which she'd blocked, but through a mutual friend's account. I hope you're happy. The wedding will be perfect without you. I finally have a real family that values success and class. Thank you for teaching me who really matters. Enjoy your pathetic life. I read it sitting alone in my half-packed apartment. The cruelty in those words told me everything about how completely the Hartfields had poisoned her mind. She wasn't just marrying into their family. She'd become one of them. The night before the wedding, my phone rang. Emily Richardson. Her voice was panicked. "Terry, we have a problem. A big problem." What happened? The investigation leaked. Someone in law enforcement tipped off the Hartfields. "Richard knows the feds are coming. They're moving money offshore right now. I have a source who works at their bank. Millions are being transferred to accounts in the Cayman Islands. They're preparing to run." When? Right after the wedding. They're using Anna's wedding as a cover. They've already booked private flights to Switzerland for Sunday morning. Richard, Caroline, and Justin. The prosecutors can't move fast enough. By the time they get warrants, the Hartfields will be gone. What about Anna? Justin told his parents he's taking Anna to Paris for their honeymoon. But the tickets are one way. My source says once they're in Europe, Justin plans to abandon her. Just leave her in a foreign country with no money and no way home. They used her for cover and they're throwing her away. I stood up, my heart pounding. The wedding is tomorrow at 2. I know. Laura is trying to get emergency warrants, but she doesn't think she can get them approved before Monday. Terry, if we don't stop this wedding, the Hartfields will escape justice and leave your sister stranded in Europe. I signed an NDA. If I interfere, I face criminal penalties, and they reinstate their lawsuit. So, you're just going to let it happen? I looked around my apartment. Boxes everywhere. My entire life packed up. My business destroyed. My family gone. Everything I'd built reduced to boxes and ashes. No, I said. I'm going to stop them, whatever it costs. The wedding was at the Lakewood Country Club, an exclusive venue north of Chicago. I arrived early Saturday morning with Marcus, my investigator, and David, my lawyer. Emily drove in from Boston. We met in the parking lot of a diner 3 miles away. "This is insane," David said. "If you crash that wedding, the Hartfields will have you arrested. Everything you signed, all the agreements, you'll be in breach. They'll sue you, press charges, destroy whatever's left of your life. They're already destroying my life. At least this way Anna gets out." Marcus pulled recording equipment from his bag. "I've got cameras and audio. If we're doing this, we document everything. Whatever happens, we need evidence." Emily was pale but determined. I called the 3 families who were displaced by the Hartfields' housing fraud. They're coming. They deserve to confront Richard face to face. Laura Matthews? She can't officially be involved. This is vigilante justice, not law enforcement. But she told me federal agents will be positioned outside the venue. If the Hartfields do anything violent or incriminating, the agents can intervene. I looked at each of them. You don't have to do this. This is my fight. Marcus shook his head. You hired me to find the truth. Well, truth doesn't mean anything if it stays buried. David sighed. I'm going to regret this. But I've been a lawyer for 23 years, and I've never seen anyone fight as hard as you. If we're going down swinging. Emily's eyes were fierce. The Hartfields stole years of my life. Watching them face consequences is worth whatever happens. We drove to the country club in separate cars. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Guests were already arriving. Expensive cars, designer dresses, the wealthy elite of Chicago society. I watched from across the parking lot as Anna arrived in a white limousine, her dress visible through the window. She looked radiant, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Susan arrived with Anna, fussing over her daughter's veil. Caroline Hartfield emerged from another car, elegant in pale blue. Richard stood at the entrance, greeting guests with the confidence of a man who believed he'd won. At 1:50, I walked toward the entrance. Marcus and David followed behind. Emily waited by her car, marriage certificate in hand. Security stopped me at the door. Name? Terry, Anna's brother. The guard checked his list. You're not on the list, sir. I know, but I'm family, and I need to be here. I'm sorry. I can't let you in. I pushed past him. He grabbed my arm. David stepped forward. Touch him again and I'll have you arrested for assault. He's family. He has every right to attend. The guard hesitated, confused. In that moment, I walked through the door and into the country club. The ceremony room was stunning. 300 guests seated in rows. An altar decorated with white flowers. Classical music playing. Anna and Justin were already at the front with the officiant. The ceremony had just started. I walked down the center aisle. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Anna saw me, and her face went white. Justin's jaw tightened. At the front, Richard Hartfield stood from his seat, his face dark with rage. The officiant paused. Is there something you need, sir? I reached the altar, looked at Anna, saw fear and anger in her eyes. I object. Chaos exploded. Guests gasped. Anna stepped back. What are you doing? Stopping you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Richard Hartfield stormed forward. Security! Remove this man immediately. I raised my voice, projecting to the entire room. Justin Hartfield is already married. This wedding is fraud. He's committing bigamy. Justin's face went red. That's a lie. He's insane. I'm calling the police. Call them, I said. Please, because Emily Richardson, your legal wife, is standing in the back of this room right now with your marriage certificate. Every head turned. Emily walked down the aisle, holding up the document. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. I'm Emily Richardson. Justin and I were married 5 years ago in Boston. We were never divorced. Our marriage is still legally valid. Anna's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair, her face ashen. Susan rushed to her side. This can't be true. Tell me this isn't true. Caroline Hartfield stepped forward, her composure cracking. That marriage was dissolved. Emily signed papers. I signed a separation agreement. Not a divorce. Justin is still my husband. The room erupted into chaos. Guests stood, talking loudly. Phones came out, recording. Justin looked at his parents desperately. Dad, do something. I kept going. But that's not all. Let me tell you about Richard and Caroline Hartfield, about the federal investigation into their real estate company, about the $15 million in housing fraud, about the 6 families they illegally evicted and displaced. Richard Hartfield lunged at me. His face was purple with rage. You little bastard! I'll kill you! He swung at me. I ducked. Security finally reached us, but instead of stopping me, they tried to restrain Richard. He fought them, screaming, "Get your hands off me! Do you know who I am?" Caroline tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous. These are all lies. He's been spreading lies about us for weeks." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I have documents, bank records, court filings, testimony from the families you destroyed. And I've already provided everything to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Federal prosecutors are building a case against you right now." "You signed an NDA," Richard screamed. "You can't talk about this. I'll sue you for every penny." "Sue me. I don't care anymore. You've already taken everything. But you're not taking Anna." An elderly woman stood up from the back of the room. I recognized her from Marcus's files. Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, age 73. One of the families the Hartfields had displaced. Her voice was thin but clear. "My husband and I lived in our apartment for 37 years. Richard Hartfield had us illegally evicted. We lost everything. We were homeless for 6 months. 2 other people stood up. A middle-aged man, a young woman with a child, all victims of the Hartfields' fraud. Each one told their story." The room fell silent, listening. Anna stood up, her dress trailing behind her. She looked at Justin. "Is any of this true?" Justin's face was slick with sweat. "It's all lies. Distortions. He's trying to ruin us." "The marriage certificate. Is that real?" Justin looked at his parents. Caroline stepped in. "It was a youthful mistake. The marriage was basically annulled. It doesn't matter." "It does matter." Anna's voice broke. "Were you going to tell me?" "After the wedding," Caroline said smoothly. "We were going to handle it quietly. There was no reason to upset you before your special day." "My special day?" Anna laughed, a broken sound. "You were going to let me marry someone already married?" "It would have been taken care of," Richard said, his voice ice. "None of this matters. This is all theater orchestrated by your bitter, jealous brother." Anna turned to me. "Why? Why are you doing this?" "Because they were going to use you and throw you away. They had plane tickets to Europe for tomorrow. Justin was going to abandon you in Paris." "That's absurd," Justin sputtered. Marcus appeared at my side, holding his phone. "One-way tickets to Paris, then connecting flights to Geneva, booked under Justin Hartfield. Only one return ticket for Justin alone, dated 4 weeks from now." Anna stared at Justin. "Were you going to leave me?" "No. I can explain." "Stop lying," Anna screamed. "Stop lying to me." The doors at the back of the venue burst open. Federal agents in suits and FBI jackets flooded in. Laura Matthews walked at the front. "Richard Hartfield. Caroline Hartfield. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, housing discrimination, and obstruction of justice." Richard's face went from red to gray. "You can't do this. Not here. Not now. We have warrants. You have the right to remain silent." Laura nodded at the agents, who moved forward with handcuffs. Caroline tried to run. An agent caught her. She screamed, losing all composure. "Do you know who we are? We have lawyers. We have connections. You'll regret this." "We've been building this case for 2 years," Laura said calmly. "We know exactly who you are. That's why we're arresting you." Justin tried to slip away in the chaos. Marcus grabbed his arm. "Not so fast. There's a detective outside with questions about fraud and bigamy." I watched as federal agents led Richard and Caroline Hartfield out of the country club in handcuffs. 300 wedding guests stood in shocked silence, phones out, recording everything. This would be all over the news within the hour. Anna stood at the altar in her wedding dress, makeup running down her face. Susan was beside her, looking lost. Anna turned to me. Her eyes were full of tears and something else. Rage. "You destroyed my wedding. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I'll never forgive you for this. Anna, get out. I never want to see you again." Security finally arrived in force. They escorted me, Marcus, and David out of the venue. Emily followed. As we walked through the parking lot, I heard Anna sobbing behind me. Susan was screaming at someone, her voice high and hysterical. I'd saved my sister, stopped the Hartfields, helped bring corrupt people to justice, and in doing so, I'd lost my family completely. 3 months after that destroyed wedding, I sat in a coffee shop in Denver, looking out at the Rocky Mountains. I'd left Chicago in September, right after the Hartfields' arraignment. Started over in a new city where nobody knew my name or my story. The legal fallout had been spectacular. Richard and Caroline Hartfield were facing 15 federal charges including fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Their bail was denied due to flight risk, especially after prosecutors revealed the offshore accounts in the plane tickets. They were looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Justin Hartfield was charged with bigamy and fraud. He cut a deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against his parents in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'd likely serve 3 years. Emily Richardson's marriage was annulled, and she received a substantial settlement. She'd become a victim advocate, helping other women escape abusive relationships. The 6 families the Hartfields had displaced received a $2 million settlement from the seizure of Hartfield assets. Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, the elderly woman who'd spoken at the wedding, called me personally to say thank you. "You gave us back our dignity," she said. "You're a hero." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who'd lost everything that mattered. My architectural business in Chicago was dead. I'd officially dissolved the firm in October. But word of what I'd done, the real story, had spread through industry networks. Several firms in Denver reached out with job offers. By November, I'd started a small practice focusing on affordable housing and community design. The work paid less but meant more. Anna didn't speak to me for 2 months after the wedding. She'd been hospitalized for 3 days with what the doctors called acute stress reaction. Susan stayed with her, both of them furious at me for destroying Anna's perfect day. But time and therapy worked on Anna. She started seeing a counselor who helped her understand how she'd been manipulated, how the Hartfields had isolated her from family, convinced her that wealth and status mattered more than character, groomed her to be a compliant trophy wife. She learned that Justin had planned to abandon her in Europe, leaving her stranded with no money and no return ticket. She learned about Emily's abuse. She learned about the families the Hartfields had destroyed. The full weight of what she'd almost become part of hit her hard. 6 weeks after the wedding, I received a letter. It was from Anna. 10 pages, handwritten. "Terry, I don't know where to begin. I'm so sorry. Those words feel so inadequate, but they're all I have. I betrayed you. I chose status over blood. I let terrible people convince me you were the enemy. I became someone I don't recognize when I look back at those months. The things I said to you, the way I treated you, abandoning you when you needed me. I was cruel. And the worst part is, you sacrificed everything to save me from a nightmare I couldn't see. You lost your business, your reputation, your home, all to protect me. And I repaid you by hating you for it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know if I can forgive myself. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what you did. I see who you are. And I see who I became. I'm working on being better, being the sister you deserved. If you're willing, I'd like to try to rebuild what we had. I understand if you can't, but I had to try. Love, Anna." I read that letter 5 times. Then I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Terry, I got your letter." She started crying. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. I forgive you." "Just like that? You're my sister. I love you. That doesn't mean trust is automatic. We have to rebuild that. But I forgive you." We met a week later at a neutral location, a park in Wisconsin halfway between Chicago and Denver. We sat on a bench and talked for 4 hours. Anna told me everything about how the Hartfields had manipulated her, how they'd slowly convinced her I was jealous and unstable, how they'd made her believe status and wealth were what mattered, how they'd promised her a life that was really just a cage. I was so desperate to be someone, she said. Growing up, we never had anything. Dad died and left us with debt. Mom worked herself to exhaustion. You sacrificed everything for us. I wanted so badly to be successful, to be special, to matter, and the Hartfields offered me that, or I thought they did. I didn't see that they were just using me. They used both of us. They're good at it. You saw through them. Why couldn't I? Because you wanted to believe. That's not weakness, Anna. That's hope. They exploited your hope. We agreed to stay in contact, to rebuild slowly. She started calling once a week, then twice. By December, we were talking regularly. The conversations were sometimes awkward, sometimes painful, but they were real. Susan was harder. She'd lost everything when the Hartfields were arrested. The social connections, the promises of help, the fantasy life she'd been building. She blamed me initially. In her mind, I'd destroyed Anna's happiness out of jealousy, but Anna worked on her, showed her the evidence, explained the federal case. Slowly, Susan began to understand. 4 months after the wedding, she sent me a brief email. Terry, I was wrong. I chose the wrong side. I don't know how to make that right. I'm sorry. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. I wrote back, I'll be here when you're ready to really talk. In January, I got an unexpected call. Laura Matthews, the prosecutor. Terry, I wanted to update you. The Hartfields trial is scheduled for March. Both Richard and Caroline are refusing plea deals. They're going to fight every charge. I'll need you to testify. I'll be there. One more thing. The 6 families you helped, the housing fraud victims, they wanted to establish a fund in your father's name, the Robert Memorial Fund for Housing Advocacy. They're asking if you'd sit on the board. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd be honored. By March, my life in Denver had stabilized. I had a small firm with 3 employees. We were working on a community center project for a nonprofit. The work was meaningful. I was building something again. The Hartfields trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days, described everything they'd done, the intimidation, the fraudulent lawsuit, the systematic destruction of my business and reputation. The jury listened carefully. Richard and Caroline were convicted on all 15 counts. Richard was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Caroline got 10. Justin, who'd cooperated, got 3 years. All their assets were seized for restitution. After the verdict, I stood outside the courthouse. Emily Richardson was there, along with Mrs. Jenkins and the other displaced families. Reporters surrounded us. One shoved a microphone in my face. Mr. Terry, you lost your business and your reputation fighting the Hartfields. Was it worth it? I thought about that question, about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I lost my business, my reputation, my relationship with my mother and sister for a while, but I gained something more valuable: integrity. When they asked me to choose between being accepted and being right, I chose right. And in the end, standing alone with the truth was better than standing with lies in a crowd. 6 months after the trial, Anna moved to Denver. She'd left Chicago, unable to face the constant reminders of her almost marriage. She got a job in marketing and found an apartment near mine. We had dinner twice a week. The trust was rebuilding slowly. Susan came to visit in June. She stayed for a week. We had hard conversations. She apologized, really apologized, for choosing status over family, for believing the Hartfields over her own son. We weren't completely healed, but we were healing. One evening, I sat with Anna on my apartment balcony, watching the sun set over the mountains. She'd been quiet all through dinner. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "About what you told that reporter." about choosing right over being accepted. I wish I'd learned that lesson before I needed you to teach it to me the hard way. You learned it. That's what matters. Do you think we can ever really go back to how we were? No, we can't go back. But we can build something new, something honest. She smiled. I'd like that. I thought about my father, about the man who'd taught me to stand up for what was right, even when it cost you everything. About the promise I'd made at his funeral to take care of our family. I'd kept that promise, even though it nearly destroyed me. Blood doesn't make family. Character does. The Hartfields had everything: money, status, connections. But they had no honor. And in the end, honor won. It didn't win quickly. It didn't win easily. But it won eventually. And that victory was permanent. I learned that standing up for justice sometimes means sacrificing everything temporarily. That fighting corrupt, powerful people requires being willing to lose everything that makes life comfortable. That sometimes the right choice is the one that costs you the most. I also learned that family isn't about blind loyalty. Real family stands by you in darkness, not just in light. Real family chooses character over comfort. And when your family asks you to betray your character for their convenience, they're asking you to lose the only thing that's truly yours. The Hartfields are in prison. The families they hurt have received justice and restitution. Emily Richardson is helping other victims. Anna is rebuilding her life with honesty instead of pretense. Susan is learning that status without substance is hollow. And me? I'm standing in my Denver office, looking at a photo of my father on my desk. I whisper to him like I do sometimes. I did it, Dad. I stood up. I didn't back down. It cost me everything, but I stood up. I imagine what he'd say. Probably something simple and true. I'm proud of you, son. That's enough. That's more than enough. The phone on my desk rings. It's a potential client, a nonprofit working on transitional housing for families experiencing homelessness. They want me to design a community that preserves dignity while providing support. Work that matters. Work that helps people the way I wished someone could have helped Mrs. Jenkins and the other families the Hartfields displaced. I answer the phone. This is Terry. How can I help you? And just like that, I'm building again. Not the same things I built before. Something better. Something that matters more. Standing up for what's right doesn't always lead to immediate victory. Sometimes it leads to loss, pain, and isolation. But in the long arc of things, integrity wins. Character endures. And the people you save, even when they don't thank you, even when they hate you for it, those people are worth the cost. I chose right over acceptance. I chose truth over comfort. I chose protecting the vulnerable over protecting myself. And I'd make the same choice again. Every single time. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between doing what's right and keeping the peace with people you love? Have you ever stood up against powerful people, even when it cost you everything? What would you do if your family chose status over loyalty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If this story moved you, if it made you think about integrity and family and what really matters, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moral choices. And share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it costs everything. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, when life asks you to choose between being accepted and being right, choose right. The acceptance that matters will follow eventually. The integrity you build is forever. Take care of yourselves. Stand up for what matters. And never let anyone convince you that status is more important than character. Until next time.